on the wall, eh? Okay, now you're talking my language.
You ever drunk Baileys from a shoe?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mother, for replacing the baby aspirin with LSD.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountain?
All right, welcome into the Views from C-Deck, and this will be a special podcast as we look back at the 2015 Ohio State quarterback battle between Cardale Jones, the reigning national champion quarterback, JT Barrett, who had got the team to the point that they could contend in 2014 and had one of the best quarterback seasons in the history of the school in 2014, and Braxton Miller, who sat out 2014 with an injury but had put up crazy video game-like numbers in Urban Meyer's offense leading in. But Casey, we have to go back right after we win the national championship, spank Oregon. What are you thinking about next year's quarterback right in that moment?
In that moment, I'll be honest. I mean, I was loving me some Cardale, especially against Bama, trucking dudes over and all that good stuff. But I'm thinking, please God, go with the guy that dominated for 12 games and not the flavor of the month. Because I knew it was going to be a thing, right? Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
He wins you a freaking national title. I get it. But I wanted JT all the way.
Yeah, I'm similar. I mean, obviously not ideal that we both feel the same way, but I remember talking to somebody afterwards, and I go, oh, JT's the quarterback. Like, there was no doubt in my mind he was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm also hoping, for Cardale's sake, we're fast forwarding a couple weeks, it's time to decide whether or not he's coming back.
He had his little announcement, the mini LeBron.
The decision.
Yeah.
Linville style.
Yeah.
But announces that he's returning to school at this gigantic press conference, which blew everybody's mind. And
Because
I'm like,
I did not want it.
yeah.
Damn it. And he screwed himself because he could have made a lot more money.
I don't know about that, but we can talk about that later. I just don't know that anybody's drafting a guy off of 3 games.
Maybe not, but I think somebody would have taken a chance on him, considering after the following year, of course he doesn't know what's going to happen, but seeing what he did and couldn't even win the own battle against. I mean, I love JT, but he didn't have the greatest arm in the world, so can't win the battle against him. How are you going to play in the NFL?
Right. So Braxton never crosses your mind at that point, and I know you're a Braxton guy.
Oh, I loved Braxton. Like, oh yeah, when he went down at the beginning of that season, my heart sank. And then when we lose to Va Tech, I'm like, well, I guess it's just a rebuilding year, right? Like, I was at too. And
I was at Va Tech too. Oh yeah.
I was at that game. I'm always an optimist, and I will say, I was in the car, and I know one of my brothers will piss me off because he's kind of like Jason, kind of looks at the glass half empty, kind of talks. I don't like talking trash about any Buckeye, but just like season's over, blah blah blah, and I even said, well, it's like I'm pissed too. We sucked, but are you telling me if we win the rest of our games that we won't make the playoff? And it didn't sound. I mean, it's not possible at that moment, right? Like,
right.
We don't have a quarterback. You know, our offensive line looked like trash. We got sacked, I think, like 9 times in that game. But, right. I mean, yeah, in that moment, I'm thinking we're screwed. But fast forwarding after winning the title, I did not think – honestly, I don't know why, but it didn't cross my mind that Braxton was an option.
Right. For me, Braxton was the first elimination too, but it's a different reason. I mean, I like Braxton a lot, but I haven't loved him ever the same way a lot of people have here, because with Braxton, the explosiveness and the amazing plays he can make were also brought down a bit in my eyes by the lack of easy plays. The easy plays that he would miss, that he was awful at the read option, which is like the staple of Urban's offense. But he's so athletic that it didn't really matter. But that making the right read, he was going to keep it more times than not, just because he thought he could beat the guy.
And the other reason I didn't want Braxton, and I mean, it kind of ended up being the same with JT, but I think it would have been even more so that, I mean, Urban has man crushes on mobile quarterbacks, and it was very evident in the Michigan State game in 13 where you give the freaking ball to Carlos Hyde,
Yeah.
and you're to a national title.
Yep.
He loves Braxton, and the opposing coaches knows that he loves Braxton. They sniffed it out. So I think that could have been a problem in 14, or in 15 if Braxton was the quarterback.
Well, it became even later on with JT in 15.
Yeah.
Eventually, there was the game that we lost is because he went too much to the quarterback run. Didn't want to give it to Zeke there's a lot of reasons for that, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It is his blankie, and this is why it was so funny when he ended up deciding, like, his binky, his comfort toy is the quarterback run. And he picked the least capable runner of the three.
He picked hand and arm.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And the Va Tech game, I remember we didn't know when the players went out, at kickoff, we didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. And I remember seeing Cardale's fat ass going out on that field, and I was so pissed off.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to reel us back in, though. Go back a minute because we're going to talk about that later.
Okay.
So, one other point about me getting off the Braxton train. What actually got me off the Braxton train was Kenny Guyton and his play when Braxton went down in 2013. Because then we saw a distributor at quarterback. It's like having the score first point guard. It's like having Russell Westbrook all of a sudden become Chris Paul. And you're like, they're both effective in their own ways, but the offense was more consistent. The big problem with Braxton, especially against Michigan State this whole career, they owned him, was that he would have these 28-point quarters or like huge scoring spurts, because he would just rip off like three huge plays. Either he would rip it off or the offense would, because of him being on the field and demanding so much attention. But then you go 2-3 quarters with doing nothing, because you have 3 and outs, fumbles because of his inability to do the read option properly. And he didn't run with the ball the most securely, didn't throw the ball well without throwing picks. In general, if he threw the ball a lot, he was going to end up throwing a pick or two. So we go through. I remember the 2013 Michigan State game at Michigan State. We have 3 chances, only up a point, 17-16 in the fourth quarter, to put together a drive to ice that game. It's when they have Le'Veon Bell, and they're not good. They were like 4-8 that year, 5-7. And we didn't get a first down. He couldn't get us that first down in that game, but we held on to win somehow, because that's just what we did. We won a lot of games with Braxton at quarterback, though, so I understood why people loved him. But to me, the Kenny Guyton experience and seeing this offense with a distributor, getting the ball to these playmakers so you could see the talent, Devin Smith, Jordan Hall in that game was huge, Carlos Hyde, of course. You just want to see – I wanted to see more of that. So when JT puts together the 2014 season that he does, obviously he struggles the first 2 games, but then look at this stretch we go on.
True freshman.
Redshirt
freshman. But I mean, you can't expect the world out of this guy. You're playing. I mean, Va Tech was no joke. Their defense.
Their defense wasn't. They were bad though. But here's the games after that. 66 points against Kent State, 50 points against Cincinnati, 52 points against Maryland, 56 points against Rutgers. Bad game at Penn State, but it's a whiteout at night, and we played a very conservative game plan that night. He only threw 19 passes.
He won the game.
Yeah. Then 55 against Illinois. Then his coup de grace. Up to that point, a top 3 Ohio State quarterback game of all time at Michigan State at night. 16 for 26 for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he was throwing. I rewatched the game this week. He was throwing dimes, including a 3rd and 23 bomb. He hits perfectly over the shoulder, right to the sideline, to Devin Smith. And we were in trouble going into that drive. Our defense struggled mightily in that game, and then at the end of the first half, he hits a beautiful bomb to Devin Smith as well. Just a great quarterback game. He also ran for 14 carries for 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, in all, 0 turnovers, 386 yards of total offense, which is Braxton never sniffed that amount of total offense, and 5 touchdowns against the team that Braxton could never do anything against, Michigan State, on the road at night. That's when that's the quarterback that I wanted to win the battle as well.
Yeah. And he's a freshman, right? Like,
Right.
Braxton, God love him, but after a couple years, it's like you got him on tape. You know what he is.
Yeah.
Right.
You're what you are. Inconsistent Pat. Braxton could never play in a rhythm. He was best at broken plays and making things happen himself, which can be very effective when you're as good as he is.
Ben, hit that B button.
Now, to the people who wanted Cardale, and I'm going to look at him very critically, the critical eye is on the next 3 games, though, which is at Minnesota, Indiana, and Michigan. Now, his stats for JT are not terrible in those games. He has a ton of offense.
You're talking about, right?
Into 14 before he gets hurt.
Oh.
But the offense in all 3 games did what I said I don't like about Braxton, is it sputtered for huge portions of the game. Indiana especially. We needed two punt returns for touchdowns by Jalen Marshall to really win that game, because we struggled from the second quarter till the fourth quarter. He threw a couple more touchdowns to Jalen Marshall as well, I believe. And his stats aren't bad for that game. 302 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, but 78 yards rushing. 380 yards of total offense, 4 touchdowns. Not a bad day. But if you watch that game, it wasn't as good as those stats say.
Yeah. Minnesota's where he ran 80 yards, right? He looked like he was walking in mud.
17 for 189 and a touchdown in that game.
In the snow.
Yeah, running. And he also threw for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. So it's like, but I don't think we scored 1 touchdown in the second half, and that was it, because we slowed up. And then Michigan game, it was a very close game when he got injured. He had fine stats, 13 for 21, 176 and a touchdown, and 15 carries for 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. But look, these carries were back up to where Urban's starting to rely on him too much and making our offense too predictable, and I think that's what was worse. So then Cardale steps in, and the Wisconsin game is, you can almost throw it out the window.
They have no idea what they expect, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden you're a completely different team.
Right. Completely different team. And nobody knows. And he goes out there and he's just winging it. And he hits 3. And this is what people didn't like about JT, is the deep ball wasn't there a lot, except for like my examples again with Devin Smith, which he also hit one against Cincinnati. Like, kid hit the deep ball as a freshman. But they see him, Cardale comes in and is just winging it against Wisconsin. 12 for 17, only 17 passes. He had 257 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Perfect quarterback rating. But only 8 carries for 9 yards. Something will come later. But also, if I look at the game, I just rewatched it. The passes that he were hitting, he threw one perfect one. The second bomb that he hit to Devin Smith is perfect. The other 2 are late and up in the air, and they're jump balls that are totally misplayed by the defense. And of course, Devin Smith makes a play, because actually Devin Smith may be the greatest deep ball receiver we've ever had in this program, which is kind of crazy to think about. But he really was that good at just that, like tracking the ball, going and high pointing it, and getting open deep. The man was a savant at it. He couldn't catch a slant.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's crazy. So then we get to Bama.
He was not good at Bama, I swear.
No. 18 for 35, bad. 243, that's fine. 1 touchdown, 1 pick.
He fumbled though, right? Or was that
No, he did not fumble against Bama.
Okay.
But he did have a couple of foot bobbled snaps that cost us points in the red zone.
That's what it was. We're on like the 2-yard line, 1st and goal, and he freaking fumbles the snap. All of a sudden it's like 2nd and 10. And then he throws one out of the end zone. And then it's 3rd and 10, and then field goal. We're from the 2-yard line, and I'm thinking in my head, we have to score a touchdown here, or we're gonna lose this fucking game. And somehow they pulled it out, but
yeah, he did have that big run where he trucks the safety at the end, and maybe sets it up. And then, but the offense in general does move the ball well most of the game. So we end up with, they scored we scored 42, but the offense scored 35. Steve Miller had the pick six.
Yeah.
But overall, no, you're like, well, we scored 42 against frickin' Bama, who's like the best defense still in the country that year. Then we get to Oregon, who's not a good defense, but they force a lot of turnovers. Well, that game, they forced a lot of turnovers on us. He throws here's his passing stats: 16 for 23, 242. That's pretty solid. 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Yeah. 21 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, but 2 fumbles. And the pick's not his fault. That hit, it was not a great throw, but it hits Jalen Marshall in the hands and bounces to a defender. The amount of bounces that Oregon got that night is insane, because they also recover their own fumble after it just bounces right back to the guy that fumbled it. Every fumble, they just like, it goes like right to where they're at. It's nuts. You know, they recovered like 22 fumbles that year on defense. That's nuts. That's just fumble luck.
So those stats you just gave me are, I'd say, slightly above average.
Right, but I mean, you're playing in big pressure games. Opponents are good.
So
you're right. They're above average.
He did fine, but he is not the reason we won that game by any stretch of the imagination.
Zeke Elliott running for over 200 yards and totally being unstoppable is why we win all 3 of those games.
Yeah.
Well, Wisconsin, you can just almost throw out. Everything went our way that night. Nothing went their way that night.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why it ends up the way it does.
That's what always. There's still a lot of people out there that think like Cardale, like he was the right choice because we won a title with him. But if you look at those stats and watch that game, he had, I don't want to say it had nothing to do with it, but it was just the fact that the threat that we can throw that deep ball was the biggest thing that he brought to the table, not his actual ability.
Right. But even that, the big runs by Zeke, the 85 yards to the heart of the South, they weren't worried about us throwing the deep ball on that play. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The reason it worked is because they weren't, because the safety got too far up, and so Evan Spencer's crack block takes out 2 guys, and that we're off to the races. And even the Oregon game, the first possession we had, I forgot that I thought we answered their score. We did not. And in the Oregon game, we got real lucky. We weren't down 21-7 in that game. Real lucky. They dropped 2 key third down passes they're wide open on them, both of them. That's the only way we stopped them, their first 3 possessions. But our first possession, his first 3 pass attempts, he ends up tucking and running, Cardell. Like, he's afraid to throw it early on in the game. And then he also has, like, both his fumbles, he's not touched by a defender. He messes up a read option, and then the other one, he just loses it.
They made Florida State's quarterback do that, too. Was that Jameis?
Yeah, it was Jameis.
Yeah.
Must have had some butter on his fingers from all the crab legs he was eating. I don't know. Fuck him right in the pussy. So, and I'm off season. I'm looking at these games the same way I just did this week, and I'm thinking it's obvious it's JT. But don't forget, springtime comes around. Braxton's still not throwing. JT is not going full go either because he's still recovering from the ankle injury, obviously his ankle. So it's all Cardell. And so these signs start to point to maybe Cardell. And then also in the offseason, now early in the offseason, he said something about this, and then he reiterates it, Urban does, after our game against Hawaii, where we struggled mightily on offense, where he starts to hint that he thinks the QB read option, which is his bread and butter, is now starting to get phased out of the game because defenses have started to catch up to it, realize if you put the extra man in the box to replace the guy crashing down, that then can't get crack blocked, then you're going to be able to snuff it out.
You don't have the numbers advantage anymore.
And in a way, he's right, because it has gone away. Like, it's not what the read option is, the changeup now for teams like Georgia and even us to an extent, that you're not doing it as your bread and butter running play. You're just doing it to keep the defense honest. And but it's Urban's offense, and in the end he can't go away from it, right? But he's saying that type of thing, so you're like, okay, maybe it is Cardell. But then you got to think about the personnel losses, and who did I just talk about bailing Cardell out in those big games?
Yeah, Devin Smith gone. We don't have this, if you want the deep ball threat, which I get it, we suddenly don't have one. Mhm.
Michael Thomas, God love him, is not he's a stud, but he's not a deep ball guy.
Mhm.
Jalen Marshall was our better athlete, but he's not a pure receiver at all. He's not going to go track the ball and high point it.
He was more of like a slot guy. I mean,
He's an athlete playing receiver.
yeah.
You got sophomore Curtis Samuel, who's still an athlete learning how to play receiver.
Yeah.
Basically, we don't have a deep threat. So then I'm like, well, even if he wants to execute this, he probably can't. But whatever. They still got to have we don't know what JT's going to be. To be fair, coming back off this leg injury. So then we get to camp, and you hear in the reports that they're not letting anybody run in camp. So that's like, okay, disadvantage to JT, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we're building up to the game, though, here come Urban's being mum on it, which I also hate. What do you think about that? And we can go with Dave for this too, although I think everybody knows who it's going to be, so it's not really an issue. But you get into camp and suddenly nobody knows on the team, the players don't know who the quarterback is, and they're naturally going to start taking sides, right?
Yeah, I hate it because first of all, you're splitting reps, right? So one guy's not getting as many reps as he should, whoever it ends up being, and then you're not getting that continuity with the receivers. Like you said, it's almost there had to be, I would think most of the team. Well, I guess they were probably split, but I was going to say most of them were JT loyalists because he worked that Penn State game, he freaking fought through injury, won that game for him.
Mm-hmm.
He played hurt all the time, but Cardell helped them win a freaking national title. So
Yeah.
it's not a good look. I was hoping that they made a decision a month at least before the first game, and it just kept creeping and creeping and creeping,
Right.
and that I still think. I mean, like you alluded to, I think before we were recording, but coaching had a big part in it. But I think if he would have picked JT off the bat, we would have had a significantly better chance of repeating.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the coaching there, because also we lose the Tom Herman as a coordinator, who
that was huge.
Total weirdo as a head coach later on down the road, but offensive genius. He's perfect in an offensive coordinator role, and he played that perfectly with the integrating Cardell's skill set into the current offense, trying to limit. I mean, they still ran some read options, and he was horrible at them, but tried to limit it best he could. I think because Urban's ultimately the one that's still going to make the calls on what kind of runs we're going to do. And all of a sudden, Ed Warner and Tim Beck are the ones in there. Now, hindsight's 2020 is what we learned the next 2 years about how terrible they are, and still continue to be as coaches.
Mm-hmm. Which I will say is another reason we shouldn't take Ryan Day for granted. But go on.
I concur. So then, though, captains get named. JT Barrett, captain. At this point, it's been made pretty clear. Braxton's not playing quarterback. Nobody ever sees him throw. He can't throw anymore. The shoulder's done. Mm-hmm. So he's out of the running, like most of us kind of thought he would be anyway. JT gets named captain. Cardell does not. At this point, what are you thinking?
I mean, I thought it was JT. I kind of went off a little bit, like you said, when JT couldn't practice and they couldn't run. I remember that too. But I was always thinking it's JT. Like, I'm going to be pissed off if it's not JT. When he got it almost locked it for me.
Right. At that point, I am certain it's JT. I'm like, oh, you're not naming him captain and then not making him starter. Like, but you're also like, well, Cardell came back and gave up the NFL. Like, is he really going to just sit there?
That was the thing that had me hanging on a little bit. Like, why the hell would he come back if he's not even going to play? That makes no sense. So something told him he was going to have Urban. Probably he had to have told him, you're at least going to play in like every game. Right.
Yeah. So then we get to that night that you brought up earlier. Opener against Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. It's nuts there. One of the greatest. If you go watch the game sometime and just watch the first 10 minutes of the broadcast of Enter Sandman and everything, the Hokie walk is kind of cool. And watching Zeke Elliott come out of our locker room during Enter Sandman, just stone faced behind Urban. Oh man, looking like he's gonna kill somebody. Get your juices flowing. So then they get out there. Still nobody knows nobody knows who it is, but they do say that it looks like that Cardell took the first team reps, but they both took first team reps in the warm-ups.
Yeah.
And I remember turning to my friends and I go, boys, whoever they end up deciding, we just won the freaking national championship last year. Life's good. We'll be happy. And we all go, yeah. We're all like, yep, drink our beers and we're ready to go. Actually, Virginia Tech got the ball first too, which I forgot until I rewatched it this week. And we sent them down pretty quick. And like you said, out trots Cardell Jones. And we're like, wow.
Are you fucking kidding me?
But I'm like, okay, like I said, life is good. And then it wasn't the first play like I always remembered it. They're right about witness testimony. You definitely don't remember things as well as you think you do. So I'm rewatching it, though. They threw a pass on first down. Second down, though, what do they run, Casey?
The read option, right?
It was like a triple option read. And Cardell Jones looks like a freaking baby deer out there and just like stumbles around in the backfield and gets stuffed.
Yep. And that's the thing. JT was, I don't even know if there's a question about it, the best read option decision maker I've ever seen.
Easily.
He made the best choice he made the right choice probably 99% of the time.
I'd say him and Pat White at West Virginia. That's why it was so deadly, because he always made the right choice.
Yeah.
But anyway, he runs that play. I stand up and start screaming, why'd you fucking pick him if you're going to run the option stuff?
Yeah.
And all that goodwill from that championship went away in 2 plays.
Yeah, 2 plays.
So, but the first series, we still score and we only throw the ball besides that one stupid running play. And Cardell, although even Cardell throws just kind of a weird heave to Curtis Samuel to score at the end of the drive, like a 30-yard pass. Urban's yelling at him then because it's not the right play. He didn't execute it properly. And you're just like, well, maybe he just knows better than I mean, look at this. And then the next series, we get the ball, one play, 80 yards, Zeke, just like 85 yards through out of the South. And you're like, oh, this is why they did it. Then we don't score again for the rest of the first half, by the way, and we're losing at halftime in that game.
Were we losing at half? I knew it was close.
17-14, yeah. I thought so, too. I didn't remember us losing at half. We were losing at halftime.
Shit. And at that point, I'm probably screaming, put JT in right now, God damn it. And then he did, right?
No, not when the game was in doubt. JT only gets in. We end up taking the lead our first series in the second half. We had a big pass to Braxton, big pass play. And then the next series, Braxton hits the joystick spin move on him out of the Wildcat.
That shut the door, right?
Yeah, that shut the door on him. And Brewer gets hurt, their quarterback.
Okay.
But from that point on, every time Cardell's in the game, we struggle mightily the next week against Hawaii, of all teams, like offensively. We end up winning 38-0, but we had like a couple defensive scores in that game, or like they forced fumbles out like inside the red zone. So it was not what that looked like. Let me see the stats here for old Cardell in that game. It's pretty bad. Yeah, against Hawaii, he's 12 for 18 for 111 yards, and he ran the ball 6 times for 5 yards. So 116 yards of total offense against Hawaii. Now, perhaps as much of a function of our bad play calling and everything was more of a misnomer. Then the next week, we scored 20 points against NIU. Now,
but at one point, didn't he start putting JT only in the red zone?
That is later on in the season. It's like around the Maryland game, I believe, because we struggle against Indiana as well. But Zeke bails us out with 4 touchdown runs over 40 yards in that game. 20 points against NIU that year. He goes 4 for 9 for 36 yards and 2 picks. He got benched, I believe, after that game, But then JT struggled a little bit against Western Michigan because now they're trying to integrate the two. And at this point, it is clear that this situation has been mismanaged by Urban Meyer. And that's what's fascinating about this whole thing is that you have so much talent coming back. You got Joey Bosa. You got Zeke Elliott. Both guys end up being top 4 overall picks in the NFL. Michael Thomas, who ends up setting records in the NFL for his first 5 years before he gets injured. You got defensive guys out the wazoo. You end up having, 6 guys drafted in the top 20 next year?
Yeah. Was that that wasn't Denzel Ward, was it? Or was it?
He is there, but not really playing. It's Conley and Apple playing. They're the starters for that team. Who are both, one goes in the first, they both go in the first round as well. 2 first-round corners, first-round D-line. Adolphus Washington's in there. You're just stacked with dudes that played in the NFL for a long time, too. Still in the NFL, a lot of those guys. It's just nuts. And you've mismanaged it, though. And you're one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Yep.
And it's something I've said several times in here, but I think the most underrated part of coaching that's difficult is actually putting the best guys on the field at every position. It's just hard to do because there's so many, whatever happened here, whether he wanted, I think mostly he saw what happened during the run, Urban, of how the offense flourished with a more traditional pocket passer that was the deep ball threat and how that assisted the running game at the time. But it was also, I think he underestimated, what Devin Smith was to that offense and what the element of surprise was to that offense.
Mm-hmm. That was the biggest thing, I think. No tape on it, the element of surprise, like you said. Caught Alabama off guard a little bit.
Yeah, and Wisconsin for sure.
Well, absolutely Wisconsin, yeah. That was the big thing. Because Bama, we were down 21-6, but we were playing them.
Right. Oh, yeah. And then we have the good drive. And there's 2 throws that Cardell had in his bag that JT just never did because of the arm strength. The deep out and the deep in. He made some nice throws in both playoff games on those. He never really did it against. Maybe he had one dig to Jalen Marshall against Wisconsin, but he had several to Corey Smith, especially on the deep outs. He loved throwing those to Corey Smith, and some deep digs to Jalen Marshall. Is basically those were throws that JT didn't have that were huge throws during our run that he made several times.
Yep. I mean, that dude, he had one where he faded away and threw it 50 yards.
Yeah, that was against Oregon. Yeah. He's going out to his right.
Yeah. I mean, JT, that's the thing, though. Those plays are necessary to be elite, but you're going to use them I don't know, 3-4 times a game max.
Mm-hmm.
What JT was great at, we did half the time.
30 times a game. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what never made sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's also something schematically, I think, that, and I've said this to you many times. You run the spread, and you don't have a guy who can execute the read option back there. You're at a disadvantage that unless you can make up for it with a dominant not a good O-line, a dominant O-line. They have to be road graders who are just moving people, which in the spread is not always going to be the case because you're usually want them a little svelter to be in hurry up mode.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be pushing people like Bama did in their heyday with Mark Ingram and Henry and stuff. I just don't. It hurts it so bad, but it didn't affect them that much because Zeke was literally the best running back on them. I think he was already from basically that Michigan State game on, because he was really good against Michigan State in 2014 as well. Ran for 150 yards. I think he was the best running back on the planet, NFL or college.
Yeah.
For the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
we just didn't get. I mean, we won a title, but it would have been not very often does back-to-back happen. I know it just happened, but it's only happened twice. Ever.
It should have happened there, and this decision ultimately cost us. So now we get Ryan Day trying to make a similar decision. Not the same, because we have a little bit of tape on McCord. I rewatched that game recently. You can get nothing out of that Akron game. He has like 2 throws that are legit throws in the game.
I mean, all signs point to him. He's got more experience. He has the connection with Marvin. I mean, I think he's got a better arm, and Devin's got better legs. But apparently, McCord actually has decent legs. Like, not gonna compare him to CJ's legs. I mean, I was gonna say he's better than CJ Mobile.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think I don't know. I think it's pretty evident that it's going to be McCord. I'll be shocked if Devin Brown becomes quarterback.
Yeah, I will too. I just think it's important. What we learned from this is, one, pick somebody before the end of the preseason just so the team can get behind him, and pick the guy who is actually the best at executing your offense, not an offense you wish you had, but your offense with your personnel. And I thought, like I said, it was so obvious, and it's one of those things I can't believe Urban Meyer, of all people, blew it.
Yeah. I'm guessing it has something to do with the Tebow and League days, right? Because he used both of them there, and it worked.
Yeah. But Tebow was rarely in when that game was in doubt, unless it was a short yardage situation.
And it was kind of the opposite situation where Tebow, I feel like, was more similar to JT.
Yeah.
But JT had a full season of dominating. Like, he was going to be a Heisman finalist if he didn't get hurt in that Michigan game.
Mm-hmm. And everybody who doubts JT's passing ability, dude, go back and watch that Michigan State game. He had it in spades. Like, he never was the best, but he was a very good passer. To combine with his ability to run that read option.
Yeah.
I think if he doesn't get screwed up by the changes in offensive coordinators, that he is looked at as maybe the best quarterback in the history of the. Well, no, probably not, because Justin Fields is just a different level, and Troy's Troy. But he's right there with those 3 would be it, and Stroud, for sure. If it not for, I think, what happened with the injury and then this debacle in the offseason.
Yeah, I still. That's the biggest. 15 and 19. I don't know who was the better team to not win a title. I think
19, no doubt.
Say 19.
I mean, man for man, it's 15, but actual team, it's 19.
I'm saying talent.
Yeah, well, talent, 15's better for sure.
Yeah, but 19 the bigger disappointment.
19 was a better team.
Yeah,
for sure.
5 and defense.
All right. Well, Dyerwolf, I've enjoyed looking back on this. I mean, enjoyed it, but not enjoyed it because now it's bringing back. You're right. We should have been back to back and easily, because then we after the disaster against Michigan State, which was the culmination, I think, of all this, like, just discombobulation on offense, that we just never got it going until after that game. Then we decided, okay, we're going to be like the read option offense again. And JT, we ran for like 400 yards against Michigan the next week, like, not even exaggerating, and beat them 42-13.
Yeah, and then was it Notre Dame?
Yeah, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Spank them in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
What could have been. All right, well, that'll do it for this podcast. Hope you enjoyed looking back on the 2015 QB battle with us, too. Hopefully we get a better result this year between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. But I'm just Matt. This is Dyerwolf. We will see you guys next time.
Hey, guys. Oh, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later.
A rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this beautiful land, but the